Lawrence was a leader in the field of conservation. David, now president of the Chase Manhattan Bank, was an ambassador for world capitalism. Even Winthrop had become a public figure. In 1966, he had been elected governor of Arkansas, the first Republican in 100 years. The success of Winrock Farms, his commitment to Arkansas development, and his name had made him an irresistible candidate in the poor southern state. For this Rockefeller with the common touch, the prodigal son, the odd man out in the family, his election as governor meant much more than a political victory.
If I can do something to correct some of these things, and I can get people as mad and excited as I am, then I feel that my late mother and father would be proud of me.
Babs, too, would have made her father proud. Waiting until Junior's death to join her brothers as a philanthropist, she had become deeply involved in the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And in 1971, she donated Greenacre Park, a pastoral retreat in mid-Manhattan. All 5 brothers attended the park's dedication, the last time they would all be together in public. In February 1973, the Rockefeller family gathered at Petit Jean Mountain in Arkansas for the funeral of Winthrop, who had died of cancer at age 61.
My memory goes back over the years when we were children. The games, the chores, the roughhouses, the fights, but always in the last analysis, a united family.
Winthrop was the first Rockefeller in the 3rd generation to pass away. Babs would die 3 years later, also of cancer. Their deaths signaled the beginning of a painful transition to a new generation.
The cousins found that they could no longer uncritically simply accept their role as being Rockefellers. Most of us went into our 20s in the 1960s. So we were caught up in a social environment that involved the civil rights movement and the women's movement, the anti-war movement, and if you took seriously these social movements, which all of us did because we in a sense had been brought up to be morally concerned, socially concerned, then you had to question the history of the family in your own identity.
A remarkable number of them want to change their family's name. They want to not be Rockefellers anymore. They want to, in the case of the young women of the 4th generation, they want to take their mother's maiden name. They want to give away the money. They want to go live on a reservation. They want to go live in a boxcar someplace. They want out. They want out of that family.
It was the radical student left days. And in many ways, the name Rockefeller symbolized the establishment, and what the student movement was about was anti-establishment. There's no question that I felt the tension of being involved in a movement which was using my family name as a symbol, and yet that was my name. I mean, that couldn't but create tension within me, and it did.
It was Nelson Rockefeller who turned left-wing animosity toward the family into rage. In September 1971, he ordered 1,000 New York State troopers into the Attica State Prison to put down an inmate revolt. For 4 anxious days, the nation was transfixed by images of 1,300 inmates barricaded inside Attica and the 38 prison guards they held hostage. The inmates demanded better living conditions and a general amnesty for the takeover. On the 5th day of the siege, they rejected a last appeal and threatened to kill the hostages. The governor, who had monitored the crisis from his home in Connecticut, resolved to act. It was the bloodiest prison takeover in American history. Police and prison security gunfire killed 29 inmates and 10 hostages in less than 6 minutes. Nelson Rockefeller, the man who ordered the prison retaken, was held accountable. Not since John D. Rockefeller Jr. was called a murderer after the Ludlow massacre in 1914 had a Rockefeller faced so much hostility.
Brown prisoners, Governor. How many guards did you kill?
I have decided not to seek a fifth term as governor of New York. I will resign next Tuesday after 15 years of service to the people of the state.
On December 11th, 1973, Nelson Rockefeller, weary of controversy, retreated from public life. The following summer, as he vacationed in Maine, the former governor received a telephone call that would drag the Rockefellers back into the glare of public scrutiny. It was August 17th, 1974, 2 weeks since President Richard Nixon resigned in disgrace in the wake of Watergate. The new president, Gerald Ford, asked Nelson Rockefeller to be his vice president.
The last thing that Nelson Rockefeller ever wanted to be was vice president of anything, to be standby equipment. He was not temperamentally suited for it. He was a man who wanted to be in charge. The country was in the midst of a crisis, and how could you say no when your president turns to you? But there was a more practical reason as well. He had behind him 3 failed bids as a candidate for his party's presidential nomination. And this was the last game in town for him. This was the last card he could play.
Nelson arrived in Washington eager to begin his new job. He expected his confirmation hearings to be a mere formality. They were not.
I have held public office under 6 presidents. I've been elected 4 times and served for 15 years as the governor of the state of New York. I think the record speaks for itself.
Initially, the hearings focused on Nelson Rockefeller. Back taxes owed, personal gifts to associates and friends, and a covert operation where Lawrence financed a book critical of one of Nelson's political opponents. But far and away the issue that most interested Congress was Nelson Rockefeller's place as a member of what was thought to be America's wealthiest family.
Am I the kind of man who would use his wealth improperly in public office? Or, more generally and more importantly, would my family background somehow limit and blind me so that I would not be able to see and serve the general good of all Americans?
It's really a relationship between money and power. How far do we trust individuals with great financial resources with the governance of a democratic society? There's been this notion of Rockefeller power that has been bandied about by the New Left and over a 5 or 10-year period to the degree that it's kind of penetrated, in some sense, popular culture. And so when he comes finally for his crucial moment, for his interrogation, there's a sense, okay, we're going to get a chance to see this power at last, this power that's been hidden for 2 generations now, and the power in the form of money.
The committee asked Nelson to disclose not only his own finances, but those of the entire family.
And I said, look, Governor, this is a major invasion of privacy. This is the occasion, if you want out of this process, this is the event that I think you can say you can take this job and you know what you can do with it. And I said, this is the time to exit. And he looked at me and he said, no, he said, I'm going to go through with this.
Not since Lady Godiva rode naked through the streets of Coventry, wrote the New York Times, have the inhabitants of any town itched to see something hidden, as people here now desire to see the extent of the Rockefeller fortune. Speculation was rampant. Estimates of the Rockefellers' financial holdings ranged from $5 billion to $60 billion.
They do recognize that questions have been raised as to whether the financial holdings of this family, or the manner in which they are managed, present a conflict of interest.
Nelson's vice presidential hearings exploded the myth of the Rockefellers as a family of enormous wealth. Their combined worth was revealed to be $1.3 billion, far below the most conservative estimates. Yet, as one observer noted, the point was not that they lacked power, but that their power lay elsewhere, in their connections in business, politics, and world affairs, and the mystique of the Rockefeller name.